we begin tonight's presentation on the beautiful island of Hawaii. How many of you have been to Hawaii? Yes. We like it in the winter, don't we? Beautiful island of Hawaii. I'm actually the grandson of a Hawaiian, someone who grew up on Hawaii. My grandmother used to tell me stories of when she grew up on the island of Kauai in a little town called Hanapepe. And she used to tell me all sorts of wonderful stories. I'll have to tell you a miracle story someday about the mynah birds that brought her mother money while she was sweeping out on her porch. I'll tell you that story later. That's my cliffhanger. But she would tell me amazing stories of the time where she lived on her island, on Kauai. And one day I remember my grandmother telling me, "Michael, my island isn't what it used to be. It's not how it used to be when I was a kid." Now, granted, the Hawaiian Islands have changed a lot. They've gone over many transformations over the decades, from a wild tropical island to a multi-million-dollar tourist destination. But Grandma would also let us know about the changes to her island's climate. She said, "When I was a girl, the islands were an even temperature all year round. Now it gets too hot," she says. And what Grandma was describing over her decades-long life is a change being witnessed not only in the islands of Hawaii, but changes occurring around the world. Here is a graph showing the Hawaiian Islands' number of days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which has more than doubled since the 1950s. Here's another graph showing the number of days over 75 degrees, again, more than doubling in recent years. And here's another graph of the average temperature across the United States. And this takes temperatures from states like Texas and Arizona and Florida and cooler states like Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, and it averages them out over the last 120 years. And you can see those graphs going upward. From Greenland to Egypt, from Europe to Africa, from Glacier National Park to the glaciers in Antarctica, our world is evidently changing. Speaking of glaciers, let me show you some changes to glaciers witnessed in the last century. Here's some pictures of the glaciers in Svalbard, Norway. The top photo is from 1936, and the bottom photo is from 2009. And evidently, this glacier is disappearing. Here's some others. To the left are the pictures of the Muir Glacier in Alaska. The first one on the left was taken August 13, 1941, showing a massive glacier that is now disappearing. The right picture of Muir is from August 31, 2004. And then you have the Peterson Glaciers in North Carolina from 1920, which is the bottom picture, and then 2005, which is the top picture. And you can see from these pictures that the glaciers are not the same as they were 50 years ago. In May 2017, the news site Unofficial Networks, which is a news site that gives mountain condition reports for skiers and snowboarders, uploaded an article based on a USGS survey that found that one of the 37 glaciers in Glacier National Park, not too far from here, had receded 85%. The report actually found out that all of the 39 glaciers have receded about 40% over the last 50 years. Now let's bring it closer home and talk a little bit about how things are changing in Idaho. I haven't lived here long enough to have seen massive winters, but my neighbor has. And I sat down and talked with my neighbor who lives in Naples, Idaho, and we live like way off grid, up above 3,000 feet in Naples, Idaho. Love it up there. Very happy that we learned how to deflate our tires. Otherwise, I may not have made it tonight. But we talked with our neighbor. He's been up there for decades. And he told me, he said, "Michael, the Selkirks are different than they used to be when I first got here." He said, "When we first moved here, there was Spanish moss that hung from the trees all the way to the ground." Said there were mosquitoes every summer. He said I had to cover myself in netting because there were just so many mosquitoes. He said we would have snow over our roofs in the wintertime. But the Spanish moss is gone, the mosquitoes are gone, and the snow is not as much as it used to be up in Naples, Idaho. And it isn't just the Selkirks. Right here in Sandpoint, Idaho, there were years when the city would pile up enough snow that Sandpoint residents would make snow sculptures in the city. Anybody remember those times? Yep. They still do it in McCall, Idaho, but winters haven't received the piles of snow needed for the sculptures to return. So for now, snow sculptures are gone. And this is just a small sample of indicators that our planet and climate are changing. However, not everyone agrees with climate change. Some have honest questions and valid doubts, reasons to think that something may not be totally right with the climate change messaging. Is there anyone here who has questions about climate change? Okay. I can assure you that I also have questions, and I think it is good to question, to challenge things we are told. And in just a moment, I'm going to share some things that challenge the narrative surrounding climate change. Before I share that, I want you to see how huge the climate change movement is right now in our world. And you will literally find it everywhere. From packaging on the soap you use to shower to the laws being passed in Congress, it all is aligning with climate change. This is a massive global movement. All the big tech companies and corporations have pledged to fight it. Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Nike, Johnson & Johnson, Patagonia, Nestle, IKEA, Tesla, Hasbro, HP, Beyond Meat, and the list could go on and on and on, just of companies that have pledged to fight climate change. They're united. And then you have major politicians embrace it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Al Gore, a longtime fighter for climate change, John Kerry, Bernie Sanders, and the list could go on. I just watched a news broadcast of President Trump and President Biden, both at the border, and listened to one of them talk about climate change. Religious leaders are for it. Pope Francis has written 2 encyclicals on it. Muslim leaders are on board with fighting it. Buddhist leaders are all united in trying to overcome climate change. And I want you to see that the world's religious leaders, as divided as they are on religion, are walking in lockstep solidarity on this issue. Does this concern you? It should. Global leaders are tackling it together. The Paris Climate Accord, held in December of 2015, had as its goal to bring all nations together on the planet to keep the global average temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. And they're working towards carbon neutrality by 2030 or 2050 at the latest. All of the blue up there, that represents all of the countries that have signed on with the Paris Climate Accord. There's not many countries that aren't blue. Do you see that? There's only 3, according to this chart, who have not signed on 100% with this global climate change agreement. Only 3. I want you to get a sense of how big this global movement is. This is bigger than a person, bigger than a group, bigger than a nation, bigger than a religion, bigger than any global company. There is a global push for climate activism, and if you are studying Bible prophecy, this should catch your attention. Why? Revelation 13, verse 3. Can you read it together with me? Let's read it together. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. The reason this should catch your attention is because prophecy tells us that at the end of time, all the world is going to be marching in lockstep together. Here's another Bible verse. Let's read it together. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Now, this verse doesn't mean that all powers of the earth agree about everything. We will never have global agreement on all issues. But this verse does tell us that they have one mind and they agree at least on one issue. And this global agreement on this one issue leads all the world powers and all the populations under them to give their sovereignty, their individuality, their democracy, their God-given freedoms into the power and control of this beast power. And this is why it should concern you when you see the entire world coming together on one issue. When you see the entire globe as diverse as all these groups are, in every sector of human society, finance, politics, technology, religion, science, all coming together and having one mind on one issue, it should concern you. Do you see why the climate change movement should provide some concern? The nations, the global companies, the religions of the earth are all moving together with one mind on one issue. And this is why, as a Christian, as someone interested in Bible prophecy, it is important to ask questions. It's important to ask questions as someone concerned about the end of times, as someone who wants to understand prophecy and wants the truth. It is good to ask questions about popularly held views. And there are certainly people questioning today. Here are some things that honest people are seeing in our world today. This year, Alaska is experiencing just the opposite of global warming. In this report from January 30, 2024, the ABC News said a pandemic of snow in Anchorage sets a record for the earliest 100 inches of snow. Last year, 108 inches fell on Anchorage, making this only the second time the city has had back-to-back years of 100-plus inches of snow since the winters of 1954, 1955, and 1955, 1956. By the way, I didn't have time to get it up on the slides, but as we speak, there is a severe blizzard that is hitting California. Right now, the Sierras are supposed to get over 12 feet of snow. Aren't you glad that I said Sierras and not Sandpoint? Here's a news report from CNN, January 16 this year, describing record cold temperatures across the United States. Nearly 80% of the U.S. will see below freezing temperatures over the next week as another shot of cold air spreads across the country by late week. Numerously daily cold records have already been set, including across Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. It snowed as far south as Mobile, Alabama, and Pensacola, Florida. And while there are no accumulations, both cities reported rare snowfall for a few hours. We've seen record cold outbreaks across the U.S. every few years as you go back. February 2021, more than 250 all-time cold records were set or tied in the plains from the Canadian border to Texas and Louisiana, according to the NOAA's National Center for Environmental Information. Among those all-time records was Bottineau, North Dakota. I don't even want to feel what minus 51 feels like. Has anybody ever been in minus 51? Oh my goodness. Lord bless you. You're still alive. Minus 51. Sioux City, minus 28. Lawton, Oklahoma, minus 12. Tyler, Texas, minus 6. Lowe's in Dallas-Fort Worth, minus 2. That's nothing, but it is something for Dallas-Fort Worth. Oklahoma City, minus 14. We're the coldest on record since 1899. Since 1899, over 100 years ago. Abilene, 252 straight hours, and San Angelo, Texas, 152 straight hours, all smashed their records at or below freezing. Just a few years before that, January 2019, you had new all-time record lows of minus 38 was set for the state of Illinois on Mount Carroll. At least 3 locations set all-time low records, and you just go down the list. Wind chills in minus 60s were recorded in portions of Minnesota, North Dakota, northeastern Iowa, and wind chills in minus 50 were observed as far south as central Illinois and northwest Indiana. You keep going back in your records, and you have record cold temperatures across the United States recorded 2013, 2014. You have them in 1996, 1994, 1990, 1989, 1985, recorded all and cataloged by the Weather Channel. Now, I show you this because no one can accurately predict the weather or our climate. Before the 2000s, scientists were not sure if what was coming as a result of climate change was another ice age or another global heat wave or both. The point is that you can't count on global climate scientists to tell you what will happen and when it will happen because the future is not known by them. If you were to ask your local meteorologist, how accurately can you predict what the weather is going to do in the future? He would say within the next 5 days, he can give you an accurate prediction that is 90% accurate for how many days? 5 days. If he went out a week, the accuracy would drop to 80%. If he goes out 10 days, what is the accuracy at 10 days? 50%, a 1 in 2 chance that he's going to get it right. So just know that when you're looking at a 10-day forecast, you're looking at a 50-50 chance that that's actually going to happen. James Renwick, the top IPCC scientist, has this to say about predicting what the weather will do in the future. He says the weather is not predictable beyond a week or two, which is exactly what we find out with meteorologists. Do you see the dilemma that those who wrestle with climate change are facing? The uncertainty of how CO2 levels will affect our weather and what it will bring is a best guess. Will greenhouse gases block out the sun's radiation, creating an ice age? Will it trap in the sun's radiation, turning Idaho into Arizona-like desert? Maybe the increase in CO2 levels will create another shift we aren't aware of. As an example of how difficult it is for climate scientists to predict what our climate will be like in the future, I'd like you to take Al Gore's video, An Inconvenient Truth, produced in 2006. And about 7 minutes in, he makes this prediction. He says, within the decade, that's 10 years, there will be no snows of Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is a snow-capped peak in Africa. Now, that prediction was made in 2006. We are now 18 years past that prediction. And remember, this was the very best guess of climate scientists at that time. Here's a photo of Kilimanjaro located in Africa, covered in snow in 2014. That's 8 years after Al Gore's prediction. Here's a close-up of the snow. Yes, that is real snow. And here is another photo taken in 2022, 16 years after the prediction, with a fully covered snow top. And here it is again, a close-up. Do you see the snow-covered peak? You see it? Climate scientists are really bad at prophesying what is going to come and when it will come. Now, I'm not saying that our globe is not going to warm. It may warm all over the globe or continue to warm all over the globe. It may warm just in some spots and be cooler in other spots. I was reading an article just this last month talking about an ice age that's coming to Europe because because there's going to be a shutdown of one of the huge currents there in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I don't show these photos or make this point to deny that there aren't big changes happening in our world or in our climate. I would not label myself as a denier of climate change. I do think our climate is shifting and changing, but I also think our climate has shifted and changed over several thousand years. Climate change isn't something new to planet Earth. The climate changes all the time. In fact, there's not clear consensus even within the scientific community on global warming. Here's an article that was shared with me, published on the National Library of Medicine, put out by the British Medical Association Journal. This is one of the world's oldest general medical journals, and they say in their peer-reviewed journal that a letter signed by over 50 leading members of the American Meteorological Society warned about the policies promoted by environmental pressure groups. They say, and you can read it on the screen for yourself, they say the policy initiatives derive from highly uncertain scientific theories. They are based on the unsupported assumption that catastrophic global warming follows from the burning of fossil fuel and requires immediate action. And then they say something very significant. They say, we what? We do not agree. Those who have signed the letter do not agree that there is consensus. You may hear individuals say, oh, there's 99% consensus on this. There is not 99% consensus. Those who have signed the letter represent the overwhelming majority of climate change scientists in the United States, of whom there are about 60. Now, there are many, many factors playing into our climate that cause it to change all the time, often in cycles, warming cycles, cooling cycles, stable states, and then sudden changes. Weather and climate are not pinned down to one factor. It isn't all controlled by greenhouse gases. These factors that create dramatic changes in climate include ocean currents. How many of you have heard of El Nino and La Nina? They say that we are in a super what? We're in a super El Nino right now. And that is the warming of the ocean currents causing a warming climate as a result. In 2024, we're currently in a super El Nino where the warm currents of the ocean are coming down the Pacific Ocean and creating warmer temperatures. But a new report came out February 8, 2024, stating, watch out. A La Nina is coming this fall, which will flip the weather patterns again, and we're supposed to have colder than normal temperatures. So if you've been getting used to drier streets in Sandpoint, just remember, there was a pastor down on Pine Street who said that we're going to get a lot colder temperatures in the fall of 2024. Now, if I'm wrong, just know I read that off of an article, so I'm not a false prophet. But the article says that we're supposed to get colder temperatures, and it says on top of that, we're supposed to get a wild hurricane season on the East Coast. Climate change, sudden and swinging in the opposite direction, not from carbon dioxide, not from greenhouse gases, but La Nina ocean currents. And that doesn't mean that greenhouse gases don't affect our climate. They do. But climate change is not solely affected by greenhouse gases. Another factor that affects our climate is overall cloud cover. An increase in low cloud cover has a cooling effect on the Earth because it decreases the absorption of the sun's rays by the Earth's surface, acting like a gigantic sunshade. High cloud cover, on the other hand, reflects more energy back to the Earth, acting like greenhouse gases, trapping in heat. So depending on the clouds and whether they are high-level or low-level clouds, they can affect our Earth's climate. Another obvious thing that affects the Earth's climate is the sun. Now, how many of you already knew that? It's called total solar irradiance, which makes sense that the sun would affect our Earth's climate in a major way. And supposedly in 2025, the sun is supposed to be experiencing an increase in activity. And we'll see how that affects our planet. Another thing that affects climate is radiation coming from space. That's energy waves that hit our Earth from stars that have exploded somewhere in space. And they travel all the way through space, hit our planet, and they do affect climate conditions in a very unusual way. When those, I can't take too much time, but when those waves hit our planet, it activates our planet's brain dead force field. Yeah. I don't know why my brain just went dead, but we'll blame it on something. So, anyways, those rays, they're coming in, and they activate the planet's natural electromagnetic shield that shields it from these waves, and it charges the particles in the atmosphere, which these charged particles now group together and form clouds. And these clouds pull together water droplets, and it acts as a climate moderator on the planet. So as the planet is receiving these rays, it creates these cloud covers that reflect the rays back into space and create a cooling effect for the planet. It's quite amazing how our planet acts and reacts to different stimuli from even space. But that's not the only thing that affects our planet. You have volcanic activity on Earth, which affects climate. Another one is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, which is an observable shift in weather patterns every 30 years over the Pacific Ocean that also affects climate. And just so many more things. Weather is complex, and it is affected by many, many different things. Remember, as our world warms, it becomes more conducive to plant life, because plants thrive on a warming planet, but they also thrive on greenhouse gases. We exhale CO2, but plants and trees inhale this stuff and use it to thrive. And this is why you see global CO2 levels dropping in every single graph that you look at for CO2 levels. They drop every summer. You didn't know that. You thought it was a constant increase of CO2. Every summer, CO2 levels drop. And then, when all of the deciduous trees lose their leaves, guess what happens to the CO2 levels? Winter, it goes up again. Why? Plant life. And this is my main point, and that is scientists don't know with absolute certainty what the future holds. They can guess, but climate can change like the weather. And they can give us their best estimate of what's going to happen in 2030 or 2050. But friends, there is only one who knows what is really going to happen. Scientists guess, but God knows. And this is why I love Bible prophecy, because God reveals the changes that will come to our planet is not only in not only climate patterns, but changes that will happen in many different areas of life. Isaiah 46, 9 through 10 says, I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things that are not yet done. You see, friends, Bible prophecy has proven accurate and reliable over thousands of years. Long before the climate change debate, it has predicted the rise and fall of world empires with precise accuracy. Bible prophecy has given detailed descriptions of wars and battles hundreds of years before they ever took place. Bible prophecy accurately predicted catastrophes in ancient times, and the Bible has given us a clear picture of what the forecast was in the past and what it will be for planet Earth in the coming years. And I'd like to share some of the signs which the Bible predicted would happen in our natural world, and they came to pass with striking accuracy. Jesus said, there will be signs in where? The sun, in the moon, and in the stars. And in that precise order, in the sun and then in the moon, and then in the stars. These aren't just random signs that the Bible gives. The massive changes that the Bible predicts concerning weather or wars or natural catastrophes or other world events are signs that point not just to the end of the world, but to the greatest climactic event that this world has ever seen. The signs we will cover in the Bible are meant to foretell the second coming of Jesus. When we see these signs, the Bible says, then they will see the Son of Man, that's Jesus, coming in the cloud with power and great glory. That's the second coming. And it may surprise you to discover that some of the changes foretold in the Bible that would affect our world have already taken place. Jesus said, but in those days after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars of heaven will fall, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. 3 signs in order that Jesus predicted. The sun would go dark, then the moon would be darkened, and then the stars would fall. And then Revelation gives a 4th sign that would precede these 3. In Revelation 6, it tells us, and I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven did what? They fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. The signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, according to the book of Revelation, would be preceded by a great earthquake. And friends, this great earthquake has been pinned by many Bible students to the great Lisbon earthquake. One of the greatest earthquakes to rattle this earth was the Lisbon earthquake that happened way back in 1755, just off the coast of Portugal. It was a 9.0 on the Richter scale, and it rattled the town of Lisbon for almost 6 minutes, creating 16-foot wide fissures in the streets. 85% of all the buildings in Lisbon, Portugal, including the famous palaces and libraries, were destroyed, destroying art and history, safe kept there, now lost to humanity forever. Because it was All Saints' Day, many churches were burning candles at the time, and those candles were knocked over by the rumble, creating a massive fire that burned down many of the remaining buildings that had withstood the earthquake, finishing off the destruction of the city. Everyone was so terrified that they decided that in order to survive the earthquake, they needed to run down to the docks because all of the buildings were falling. They ran down to the docks only to watch the sea completely recede. They could no longer see the ocean. They waited there for 45 minutes, and then in came a tsunami. The tsunami came in so tall and so fast that only men on horseback riding at full speed could outrun the waves of this tsunami. The reports of the tsunamis that came in that finished off the rest of the city, the waves were 66 feet high. I said that right. 66 feet high. They completely destroyed the coast of Portugal. The waves went down to North Africa, and there those waves hit North Africa. They were still 60-foot high waves when they hit North Africa. This earthquake produced tsunami-like waves that went completely across the Atlantic Ocean, and there were reports of massive waves crashing on the shores of Brazil. This earthquake may not have been the strongest earthquake to have ever hit our planet. It may not have caused the most damage or the most amount of death. But let me tell you, this earthquake was either felt or reported to every living person on the planet around the world. Everyone knew about the Lisbon earthquake. And of the 200,000 people in Lisbon, almost half of them lost their lives to the Lisbon earthquake. Now, the reason this is so significant in history is it not only was this earthquake recognized around the world, it was seen by many as a sign from prophecy. And it was followed in exact sequence by other signs mentioned in the Bible. The signs next in the sun, the moon, and then the stars. And this is why prophecies are given, not because prophecies always mention the biggest or the most catastrophic. But these prophecies are mentioned as the events that the entire world will see as prophetic events. And when this happened when Lisbon, the Lisbon earthquake happened, the world itself, all nations around the world saw this as a prophetic event. They recognized this as an event in prophecy, and then it was confirmed within the lifetime of those who had witnessed the Lisbon earthquake. And it is known, the next event is known as the Dark Day in history. 25 years later, May 1780, there was suddenly an unaccountable darkening of the sky across New England, even down to New York. Herschel, the astronomer, says the dark day in North America was one of those wonderful phenomena of nature which philosophy is at a loss to explain. Accounts of this day say that at about 8 a.m. the sky turned misty, and then the sun gradually grew darker and darker until by noon it was as dark as midnight. Chickens went to their coops to sleep. Cows came back to their stalls as if there was night. Frogs began to sing their nighttime songs. Birds found their nests. Farmers left their work in the fields. Even the legislature of Connecticut, which was in session, decided to adjourn that day. However, not without the objections from Senator Abraham Davenport, who said, "I am against adjournment." There's always one. "The day of judgment is either approaching or it is not. If it is not, there is no cause for an adjournment. If it is, I choose to be found doing my duty. I wish, therefore, that candles may be brought." From after sunset to midnight, there was no light of sun, moon, or star that penetrated the blackness. Said an eyewitness of the scene, "I could not help conceiving at that time that if every luminous body in the universe had been shrouded in impenetrable darkness or struck out of existence, the darkness could not have been more complete." The sun was darkened, the moon was darkened, and then after midnight, that very night, the moon came out as if it had been turned into blood. This event was recorded by the prophet Joel 2,500 years before it took place. In Joel 2, verse 31, it says, "The sun shall be darkened, shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord." Now, I do not object that perhaps this phenomenon was caused by the thick smoke of a fire that was burning to the north, maybe. The cause does not need to be unexplained to have been prophesied. And I think that's important. Again, the amazing thing about this is that the dark day was reported around the world, gaining global attention and turning many to the prophecies of the Bible, which is the very purpose of Bible prophecy. God writes it so that we will study it, and seeing the signs, we'll believe it. But there was one more sign to follow, the falling of the stars, which did not occur until 1833, nearly 50 years later. Revelation 6:13 says, "And the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind." And Jesus said in Luke 21:25, "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars." In that order, sun, moon, stars. November 13, 1833, there was the most extensive and incredible display of falling stars across North America which has ever been recorded. Guess how many stars fell per hour? Take a guess. How many say 150? How many say 1,500? How many say, it's more. How many say 25,000? Per hour. How many say 70,000? 72,000 meteors per hour fell that night, streaking down the sky from one central point called a zenith. According to one observer, it caused the night sky to radiate so bright with falling stars that people were awakened from their sleep believing that their houses were on fire. They went outside and saw the most amazing display of all time. The Bible couldn't have described it better when it said it would be like a fig tree being shaken and all the figs falling in every direction from one central point in the sky called a zenith. American astronomer Dennis Olmsted drew attention to the fact that no celestial phenomenon has ever occurred in North America since its first settlement, which was viewed with so much admiration and delight. By the way, in order to see this, you'd had to have been awake at 2 to 3 a.m. So if you were a heavy sleeper, you would have missed it. It wasn't just seen in North America. There are accounts of thousands of falling stars that night being seen in South America, Africa, Germany, all over the world. So significant was this event that the entire Lakota Indian tribe changed their calendar to revolve around the falling star, the night the stars fell. In 2002, under Democratic Governor Don Siegelman, the phrase "stars fell on Alabama" was added to Alabama license plates to commemorate this remarkable event. Here's how history captured that night. The Florence Gazette described this event saying, "There were thousands of luminous bodies shooting across the firmament in every direction. There was little wind and not a trace of clouds, and the meteors succeeded each other in quick succession." The Vermont Telegraph, November 21, 1833, said, "The only description we can give of it, and may be sufficient to convey a correct idea of the scene, is that there was a constant flight of what are commonly called shooting stars descending from the direction of the zenith to all points of the compass. Some occasionally were faint and scarcely visible, but others were very brilliant and terminated like a rocket with a silver star, which instantly disappeared. Probably some of these stars were more significant than those we witnessed." Oh, there it is. An early settler in McLean County, Illinois, said of that night, "It was like watching showers of fiery rain falling to the ground." Here's another man, an old-time Texan by the name of Noah Smithwick, whose life is recounted in the book, The Evolution of a State. He witnessed the meteor shower and recounted, "On the evening of the 12th of November 1833, I opened the door and for a moment stood in speechless astonishment contemplating the bewildering scene. Darting downward from a southeasterly direction as though driven by a light wind, though the air seemed perfectly still, thick as snowflakes on a winter's night, came innumerable balls and points and streams of light as though all the starry hosts of heaven were making their descent upon the earth. It was truly a grand, not to say an appalling, spectacle. The grandest display of fireworks man can conceive would give but a faint idea of the magnificent scene. Amid the lesser lights that seemed to be drifting before a breeze were immense balls of fire that, darting downward as if to consume the earth, noiselessly exploded in midair, leaving a long luminous trail that in some instances was visible for many minutes. How long the display had been in process I do not know, as it was only when the overseer's horn aroused the quarters that it was discovered. Excepting the sharp change in temperature, there was no atmospheric disturbance whatever attending the manifestation. When twilight again brought out the familiar twinklers, each in its accustomed place, the 7 stars all there, and not a nail missing from Job's coffin." I would have loved to have seen that. How about you? Other notable people who witnessed this meteor shower: Abraham Lincoln, U.S. President. Joseph Smith, founder of the Church of Latter-day Saints, recorded the event in his diary as a sign that the second coming of Christ was at hand. Harriet Tubman, famous slave who helped others escape in the Underground Railroad. These are just a few of the many prophecies in the Bible that speak about the changes to our natural world that will come. These signs all point us to knowing and seeing that we aren't living at the beginning or middle of history. We are living right at the end of Earth's history, the time period right before Jesus promised to return. But there's more. In Matthew 24, Jesus' disciples come to him with a burning question. They say, "What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? Will the world end in catastrophic global CO2 levels? Will we be pushed into an ice age, a global starvation and death? What will be the sign of the end of the world?" So Jesus lays it out to them, and he says in Matthew 24, "You're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars." He says, "See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Jesus also said there's going to be a rise in false Christs at the end of time. In fact, he gave us 5 signs to look for to let us know that the world is coming to a close. An increase in false messiahs, an increase in wars, an increase in earthquakes, an increase in famines, and an increase in worldwide pandemics. Do we see these things happening today? Let's look at some of these signs that Jesus gave. Number 1, an increase of people claiming to be the Messiah. Let me quickly list a few. Marshall Applewhite claimed to be Jesus Christ and led 39 people to commit mass suicide in March 1997. Now, the fact that anyone would follow these guys is amazing to me, but the next man was followed by more than 1,000 people to their death. His name was Jim Jones. 900 people he led to Guyana in the 1970s. Now, this was a preacher who had a large church in L.A., very popular preacher. And 900 people he convinced to go with him down to Guyana, and the rest is history. The next man still has followers today. His name is Jose Luis de Jesus Miranda. He has died, but millions of people still believe he's alive somewhere on earth. He said that he was God on earth, Jesus reincarnated. And although he has died, many still believe he's alive somewhere. And his church continues. But millions of people believed him to be the Messiah. And then you have Apollo Carion Quiboloy, is the founder and leader of the Philippines-based restorationist church called the Kingdom of Jesus Christ. How many people do you think follow this guy as Jesus? Here's your opportunity to guess again. Guess high. More than 1 million. More than 3 million. 6 million followers worldwide believing that this guy is Jesus Christ. Do you see how confused our world is? This is why the Bible says when we get closer and closer to the end of time, there are going to be fewer and fewer people who actually read their Bibles. And friends, let me tell you this, when you don't read and study your Bible, you become an easy prey to whatever comes along. We need to be people who read the Bible, who read Bible prophecy and seek to understand, especially at the times that we are living in. Over the last 100 years, I've counted more than 30 of these major religious leaders claiming to be Jesus Christ, Son of God, Messiah in this century alone. Many are still alive who claim to be Jesus Christ. Jesus' words are right on, but there's more. Jesus said that there would be an increase in wars and rumors of wars. And let me tell you, up until the 1900s, there were wars, but nothing like this century. In the 1900s, there were 3 times as many deaths than any of the other highest centuries. 166 million people died in the last 100 years as a result of war. This is due in part to the increase in the number of wars and an increase in the weapons of mass destruction. Look at this next chart I made. It shows the number of major wars per century, and you will see that these wars just skyrocket in this century alone. Now, this next chart is from the massive online data center called Our World and Data, and it shows the number of armed conflicts in the last 50 years. Again, a substantial increase. Here's a graph from the same website with the number of conflicts worldwide over the last 100 years. A massive increase. In the last 20 years alone, this graph shows the increase in deaths from conflicts around the world. Current war is being fought right now. Israel is still fighting in Gaza. Thousands are dead and dying. The U.S. and Britain are launching strikes against Houthis in Yemen and Iraq and Syria. And of course, there is the ongoing war in Ukraine and Russia. Here is a quick global picture of all the countries fighting right now and the estimated casualties in each war. In addition to these, there are threats of war specifically from North Korea, China, Iran, and Russia, which could explode at any time. We also have a war on drugs and crime that both political parties in the United States see as a major issue at our southern border. And now many new agencies are talking about rumors of a civil war that will break out in this very country. How many of you, just as a straw poll, how many of you have at least some mild concerns of a possible civil war in this country? Look around. See all the hands that are raised. We all feel it. It's as if we are living in the days of prophecy where wars and rumors of wars are just right there. It's palpable. We all can feel the divide in our world and in our own country right now. Jesus said there would be an increase in wars and also rumors of wars. Are we seeing it happen today? Absolutely. And then Jesus points to signs in the natural world. Romans chapter 8, verse 22, he says, "For we know that the whole earth groans and labors with birth pains together until now. Truly, our world is groaning. Natural disasters and global pandemics declare that Jesus is coming soon. The end is near." In Luke 21:11, he says, "And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven." The Bible points to three areas that the earth will groan: earthquakes, famines, and pestilences. That's global diseases. Let's look at earthquakes first. Have we seen an increase in earthquakes? Are they becoming more intense and frequent? As you can see from this graph, from the 1500s until now, there's been an increase in the number of deaths and the frequency of death related to earthquakes. This next graph from our world data shows the number of significant earthquakes in our world, and you tell me, has it increased? Absolutely. By the way, this data represents hundreds of scientists working together, collaborating with Oxford University to publish this data free of charge and free to use online. Of the top 10 deadliest earthquakes over the last 2,000 years, 5 of them have been in the last 100 years. The most recent being the major earthquake that struck Haiti in 2010. We're due for another. January 12, 2010 saw the devastation of Haiti was hit by a 7.0 earthquake that leveled the island. 316,000 died, another 300,000 injured, 1.3 million people displaced, more than 97,000 homes destroyed, and close to 200,000 homes damaged. In just the last 100 years, the number of global natural disasters had risen over 400%. But do you know what the biggest natural disaster that claims the most amount of lives is? It's not earthquakes. It's droughts and flooding, which have led to global famines. The UN reports that there is a food shortage in 38 of the major countries, and 1/6 of the world's population will go hungry tonight. That's 1 billion people. 10,000 people die of starvation every day. That's 3.5 million people per year. All this famine despite our technological advances. Another sign Jesus mentioned was pestilence. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. Now, what is a pestilence? Pestilence is usually fatal epidemic disease that can affect humans, crops, or animals. In the last 10 to 20 years, we have seen one pandemic, epidemic, and health crisis after another. You had mad cow disease in 2009, bird flu in 2003, swine flu. I'm sure they're going to come up with like a pet cat and pet dog flu. By the way, the flu this year is terrible. I had it like 2 weeks ago. Last week, actually. Not good. SARS, 2003, 8,000 cases, 916 deaths worldwide. And then you had COVID, 1.7 million cases, 102,000 deaths globally. Will climate change destroy our planet? Well, friends, Bible prophecy predicts that our natural world is going to go haywire before Jesus comes. Earthquakes, famines, hurricanes, pandemics, and destruction will no doubt be something our planet faces. But as these things come upon earth, how should we respond? Well, Jesus gives us a clue in Matthew 24, verse 13. And I'd like you to read it with me. Are you ready? But he who endures to the end shall be saved. Now, what does this mean? It means more than just holding it all together. It means don't let go of God when the going gets tough. When your way becomes rough and you feel all alone. The prophecies were given so that you would know that God sees all these things and he has a plan to save you. Matthew 24:33 says, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the door. What is it that's near even at the doors? Luke 21:28. Now when these things begin to happen, what are we supposed to do? Read it with me. Look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. The signs prophesied in the Bible were not meant to scare us or crush us with anxiety or dread. God's great desire for you and for me is that we will be led to seek him during this time, that we would pray to seek him, seek his salvation in our life, that we would have a yearning deep down inside to know God better. Tonight, God is calling you to turn back to him, to seek him again. Tonight, God is calling you to give your life to him and pursue what matters most, a life that is eternally saved. It's been more than 100 years now. The greatest ship in the world sailed from Southampton, New England, bound for New York City, New York. The largest ship in the water, and it was said it was the safest. However, we know what happened to the Titanic. It now sits at the sea floor beneath thousands of feet of seawater, about 600 kilometers south of Nova Scotia. The Titanic struck an iceberg. What many people forget is that while this White Star Line ship was heading west from Britain towards the United States, it received 9 warning messages saying there was icebergs ahead. 9 messages. That means 9 times somebody decided to hit the snooze button. Have you ever hit the snooze button? Have you ever hit it 9 times? You must really want to sleep if you hit it 9 times. 9 times they said, there's icebergs ahead, turn back. And you know what my real fear is? My real fear is that God has told us what is coming on planet Earth many more than 9 times. He's told us over and over and over again. And how many times are we hitting the snooze button?
Friend, do you sense that God is speaking to your heart right now? Why not respond to God right where you are? I'd like to invite you to bow your head with me wherever you are and give your life to Jesus. Let him have full control. This world won't last forever, and today you can allow Jesus into your life. If you'd like to do that, just now, here's a simple prayer you can pray. Dear Jesus, I know my life hasn't been perfect, but I see the signs that earth will end. Please remember me when you come again and save your people. I want to be one of those who goes to heaven. Please come into my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, friends, that concludes the first presentation. The next presentation in the series is entitled Rest for Planet Earth. I hope you check it out soon. Until next time, may God bless you.